I never expected a routine trip to my favorite coffee shop to turn into a nightmare. I wear a prosthetic arm due to an accident where I lost my arm, but that day Karen rips it off and says it looks disgusting. Here's how it all went down. My name's Alex. A little over 2 years ago, life threw me a curveball, a car accident, a fateful evening, and the next thing I knew, my left arm was amputated below the elbow. The aftermath was a long journey of anger, depression, and acceptance. But as with any storm, there was a silver lining. With advancements in technology, I was blessed to receive a prosthetic arm. The prosthetic was unlike any traditional ones you'd imagine. It wasn't an attempt to replicate the human skin or form. Instead, it was sleek, metallic, and futuristic, something straight out of a sci-fi movie. To me, it was more than just a prosthetic. It was a symbol of my resilience, my ability to move forward, and my embrace of the future. The local coffee shop near my workplace became my sanctuary. The staff there had become more like friends than mere acquaintances. They'd seen me at my lowest, days after the accident, and watched as I rebuilt myself, both mentally and physically. They cheered for me when I first walked in, flaunting my new arm, and defended me when a customer once said it was too robotic for their taste. It was this very place where our story begins, on a day that seemed like any other. Little did I know, I was about to face one of the most jarring experiences of my life. The coffee shop was slightly busier than usual that day. A local musician strummed soft tunes on a guitar in the corner, and a group of students chattered animatedly about their projects. I had settled into my usual corner with my laptop as I waited for my coffee. Suddenly, there was a commotion near the entrance. An older woman draped in a fur coat, which seemed absolutely out of place given it was midsummer, entered the coffee shop. I noticed her glaring at a young barista, probably for not recognizing her supposed importance. I thought nothing of it, returning my focus to my work. But then, I felt a sharp tap on my shoulder. Reluctantly, I looked up, finding myself face to face with the woman. Her pinched face was framed by her over-bleached hair, which was fashioned in an over-the-top updo. The look was completed with a splash of bright red lipstick. Karen, as we'll aptly call her, because she seemed like the epitome of every Karen meme I'd ever come across. Her voice broke my trance. "Young man," she began, sizing up my prosthetic with evident distaste, "have you ever thought about covering that up? It's, well, not suitable for such an elegant establishment." I raised an eyebrow, glancing around the casual coffee shop. "Elegant establishment?" Unfazed by my sarcasm, she continued, "You really should think of others. That thing," she gestured towards my arm with a dramatic flourish, "is just so disgusting." Taking a deep breath, I calmly replied, "It's my arm, ma'am. I'm comfortable with it." She leaned in, her perfume overwhelming my senses, as she whispered conspiratorially, "You should think of the children. Innocent souls might get nightmares." Before I could reply, she was distracted by her reflection in the glass door, pausing to check her lipstick. Shaking my head in disbelief, I refocused on my laptop, hoping that would be the end of my interaction with Karen. But as the minutes ticked by, it became clear that she was only getting started. As I tried to refocus on my laptop, feeling the weight of Karen's previous comments, I suddenly felt a violent tug on my prosthetic arm. Before I could process what was happening, I found Karen, her face flushed with determination, attempting to unhinge my prosthetic. "I knew it!" she exclaimed triumphantly, holding a part of my arm aloft. "I knew this thing could come off. I'm doing this place a favor. Such disgusting things shouldn't be flaunted." The entire coffee shop went from a buzz of activity to a stunned silence in mere seconds. The soft tunes of the local musician halted abruptly, and the group of students, previously deep in discussion, looked over with mouths agape. A mixture of emotions coursed through me. Anger, humiliation, but predominantly disbelief. "How dare you!" I uttered, my voice shaking but loud. With an air of twisted satisfaction, she replied, "I'm only trying to help. You might thank me someday." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a barista hastily making a phone call, presumably to security or the police. At the same time, a pair of patrons, a young mother with her toddler and an elderly man who frequented the shop for his daily crossword puzzle, stood up, clearly intent on confronting Karen and defending me. The casual ambiance of the coffee shop had been shattered, replaced with tension. As the reality of Karen's audacity set in, a wave of support began to surge within the coffee shop. The young mother, holding her toddler's hand, approached Karen assertively. "You need to give that back right now," she said, her voice firm. The elderly man, abandoning his crossword puzzle, joined her. "Young lady," he began, using a tone of authority, "I've seen many things in my time, but this takes the cake. Return the young man's arm at once." Karen, for the first time, seemed to falter. Surrounded by a growing crowd of displeased patrons, her confident facade began to crumble. A barista, phone still in hand, approached the scene. "Ma'am, security is on the way. It would be in your best interest to hand the arm back." Feeling the weight of the situation, and perhaps realizing the gravity of her actions, Karen handed my prosthetic back to me. Her face was a blend of defiance and embarrassment. While I hurriedly reattached it, another customer, a college student, offered me a reassuring pat on the back. "Some people, huh?" he remarked, shaking his head. Whispers filled the air as the situation de-escalated. Some patrons offered words of comfort, while others shared their disbelief over Karen's behavior. The musician in the corner, perhaps trying to lighten the mood, strummed a playful tune that earned a few chuckles from the crowd. Karen, realizing she had no allies in the room and with the imminent arrival of security, hastily made her exit, shooting me one last glare as she went. After Karen left, the coffee shop returned to its usual vibe. I got a few pats on the back and some "are you okay" questions, which I appreciated. The barista gave me a free coffee as a small gesture, and I joked that it was probably the most dramatic coffee I'd ever had. A couple of regulars said they'd keep an eye out in case Madame Leopard Print decided to make another appearance. We all had a good laugh about that. The musicians started playing again, and slowly, the chatter and hum of the place returned. I continued to go to the coffee shop, and every time I walked in, there was always a nod or a smile from someone who had been there that day. It was a reminder that even in the face of crazy events, a bit of kindness and community could make everything right again. And as for my arm, well, it continued to be a conversation starter, but thankfully no more drama. In life, we often encounter situations that challenge our beliefs and test our patience. These moments, while initially daunting, offer us an opportunity to reflect, learn, and grow. Growing up with a mother who had a penchant for drama was like living in a never-ending whirlwind of chaos. From her volatile behavior to the constant unpredictability, every day was a roller coaster ride. But little did I know, the darkest twists and turns were yet to come. Here's how it all went down. I've always said my mother is a piece of work, and believe me, that's putting it mildly. Let's rewind to when I was a teenager, and things were pretty wild. Mom had some mental health issues, and instead of taking her doctor-given meds, she'd choose whiskey. Our home always smelled of booze, which was basically a heads up that she might go off any moment. If someone suggested she take her meds and lay off the drinking, boy, you were asking for trouble. A slap or a shout, something like that. Then she'd always talk about leaving my dad. It was like a bad movie on repeat. But here's the kicker. She'd always take my little sis. Sometimes she'd even wake her up in the middle of the night to leave. Me? I got left behind. When I'd ask why, she'd say, "Because you got a job," which honestly made zero sense. And my sister? She was just dragged along for the ride. The craziest part? Dad would call the cops every time Mom took off with my sister. But they never did anything about it. I mean, isn't that kind of like kidnapping? One time, she yelled at me for not driving her around on her wild nights out. Funny thing, she stopped me from driving when I was 14, thinking I'd use it to escape the madness. My 18th birthday came around, and for some reason, she asked what I wanted. I straight up told her, a divorce. And surprise, she actually listened. Years flew by, and the dark cloud of my parents' turbulent marriage finally parted when they got divorced. In its wake, life presented me with moments of joy. Chief among them, my engagement to my high school love. Man, just when I thought things might get better, Mom went all dramatic again. I was deep in wedding planning, and she hit me with a bombshell. "Look," she began one evening, a sharp edge to her voice. "If your dad's coming to your wedding, your stepdad and I won't. You choose." I stared at her, stunned. "Mom, can't we all just be there for my big day? Why does it always have to be this way?" She just crossed her arms, eyes cold. "It's him or us, decide." I sighed, desperation creeping in. "Fine, he won't come. Happy now?" Big mistake. Huge. I missed out on having my dad walk me down the aisle, and the dance I always imagined never happened. But things didn't stop there. When I was about to give birth to my eldest, Mom threw another fit. I was at the hospital when she called. "I heard your dad's coming to see the baby. I swear if he gets to see her before me, I won't be there," she hissed over the phone. Exhausted, I said, "Mom, this isn't about you or Dad, it's about my daughter." But she snapped back, "I mean it." Regrettably, I tried to keep the peace. Okay, you can come first. Just please, no drama." Yet during labor, there she was, right by my side, chiding me. "Stop making so much noise, it can't be that bad." I remember thinking, is this for real? Here I was, bringing a life into the world, and all she cared about was herself. After that traumatic incident, we severed ties, yet, as if pulled by some masochistic magnet, she came back, tearfully begging forgiveness on our doorstep. "Please, I'm begging you," she sobbed, dropping to her knees. "Let me make things right." I hesitated, my heart warring with my mind. Against my better judgment, I let her in. She acted all sweet, making it seem like we were finally on the path to reconciliation. But boy, was I wrong. It was like inviting a snake back into your home. Then, the unthinkable happened. My baby girl was taken away by CPS. No, I wasn't a bad mom. No drugs, no neglect. She had a medical emergency while we were staying with my dad, and they took it the wrong way. You'd think a mom would be supportive, right? Not mine. Through teary eyes and a choked voice, I still remember her words, "This is your fault. You lost her." Yet here's the kicker. The adoptive parents, bless their hearts, let her visit. Can you believe it? She got to see my daughter while I could only hold on to memories. Even they couldn't handle her drama for long, though. They cut ties, and honestly I couldn't blame them. Not one bit. Another 2 years sped by, and I found myself with husband number 2 and a second pregnancy. You'd think with time, my mother's perspective would have shifted, matured even. Instead, I was met with a barrage of vitriol. "How could you be so thoughtless and get pregnant again?" she chided, her words dripping with contempt. "I won't acknowledge that, child. After all I've been through, how could you be so cruel?" Yet another chapter closed, and contact was severed. But as life's turbulence threw me into the throes of an abusive relationship, ending in yet another split, fate decided it was time for our paths to cross again. Hearing of my turmoil, my mother saw an opportunity and swiftly moved in, feigning concern and suddenly showering affection on the very child she had denounced. Hopes of normalcy blossomed in my heart. But history has a habit of repeating itself, and I soon realized her promises were as fleeting as her sobriety. I didn't completely shut her out, choosing instead to maintain a cautious distance. Over time, we tiptoed around a semblance of a relationship. There were moments of genuine connection and happiness. For the first time in forever, I felt like I had a mother again. But with my third husband, whom I genuinely loved and shared a healthy relationship with, her true colors surfaced once more. She lavished him with affection, excessively so, proclaiming, "I finally have a son." We even went to the extent of flying her out for Christmas, but the reunion was far from merry. Her constant inebriation, baseless accusations, and an unsolicited attempt to discipline my daughter snapped the fragile thread of tolerance. A forceful "get out" echoed from my lips. What followed was an uneasy peace, punctuated by her antics, the worst being her disgraceful behavior at my brother-in-law's funeral. The last straw. I drew a line in the sand, sobriety or estrangement. Our relationship hit pause. Yet, fate has a peculiar way of pulling us back. A year later, a call pierced the silence. My beloved great-aunt had passed away. Along with the somber news, my mother announced her sobriety. Hope, being the relentless emotion it is, spurred me to attempt reconciliation again, for the sake of my daughter, if nothing else. One rule, however, was non-negotiable. No mention of my dad. Despite my father's gentle nature, evidenced by the one time he broke down after spanking me, she painted him as the villain. But old habits die hard. Each call became a painful reminder of the past, with my father's name slipping through her lips time and again. This year was wild. My mom got really bad with her drinking, like a 24-pack a day and a gallon of Jack every other day kind of bad. By July, she was so wasted, she called me up. "Why haven't you brought me over?" she snapped. "Why haven't you visited?" Then she dropped a bomb. She wanted to buy a plane ticket, but just for me. Her messed up reason? That kid isn't my grandchild. I only have one. She meant my older daughter. I was furious. I shot back, "Never call me again, just pretend we're gone, we're through." But she had to get the last word. Out of the blue, I started getting all these random deliveries, even Omaha steaks. It was so weird. That was it for me. I blocked her everywhere. No more dealing with her drama. Thinking back, my childhood was one crazy ride. After some therapy, I realized something big. It wasn't me, it was her. Seriously, my mom might be the most dramatic parent ever. It wasn't just me getting fed up with her. My sister had already distanced herself, and after this last blow-up, she was totally done too. I've left out a bunch of other crazy stories, but as my kid puts it, that's where I come from. So, yeah, that's the story of me and my mom. It's been a lot, but I've come out the other side. Growing up was a mix of confusion, frustration, and just trying to make sense of it all. But life has a funny way of working out. Today, I found my own path, learned to set boundaries, and understood that sometimes family can be the toughest lesson. Despite everything, I believe everyone's got a chapter they don't read out loud. Mine just happens to have a few extra twists and turns. Looking back, I'm grateful for the resilience it built in me. Through it all, I learned what I wanted, and more importantly, what I didn't want in my life. We know an abuse when we see one. We just don't want to acknowledge it when this abuse is done by a family member or a loved one. It's important to remember that blood relation doesn't excuse toxic behavior. Sometimes it's necessary to distance ourselves from these individuals for our own well-being and mental health. Stay strong and prioritize your own happiness and safety above all else, even if it means cutting ties with family members. I never expected a simple train ride home after exams to turn into a tense courtroom drama. with all eyes fixed on me. The pregnant woman, the elderly woman, and the growing chorus of opinions created an atmosphere thick with judgment and tension. But little did I know, this encounter would spark a chain of events that would challenge my beliefs and lead to a surprising revelation. Here's how it all went down. The college bell had rung its liberating chime, signaling the end of our final exams. I was mentally exhausted, but there was an air of relief and excitement. The summer was finally upon us. Man, these exams felt like they went on forever, Jake said as we exited the college gates. I nodded in agreement. Feels like we've been freed from prison. Our preferred method of travel was always the city train. It was like a rite of passage. The station was buzzing with students like us, office-goers and street vendors trying to sell quick bites. As we boarded the train, Jake remarked, "You'd think with exams over, the universe would grant us some good karma with a peaceful ride home." The compartment was filled with an eclectic mix of people. A group of musicians strumming their guitars, a mother trying to soothe her crying baby, and an elderly couple engrossed in a crossword puzzle. We managed to find a couple of seats amidst the chaos. "Score!" Jake exclaimed as he plopped down, pulling out his phone. "New meme trends going viral. Want to see?" I leaned in, ready to dive into the world of internet humor, but the universe had other plans. The doors of the train slid open with their usual mechanical chime. Through the small crowd, a visibly pregnant woman stepped in. Her tired eyes scanned the compartment, searching for a haven in the crowded space. She adjusted her bag and gingerly touched her belly, as if to reassure the life within and herself. Just as I was about to process what I should do, an elderly woman dressed in an old-fashioned coat and scarf boomed from across the carriage. "Young man, give her your seat." She pointed straight at me with a decisive finger. Jake, always the one to crack a joke, leaned in and whispered, "Did we just enter a courtroom drama or what?" He raised an amused eyebrow. "Man, the universe sure has weird ways of entertaining us." Murmurs swelled around us like a rising tide. A teenager with headphones pretended he heard nothing, but his foot tapped with nervous energy. An older man in a business suit cleared his throat, shooting me an expectant look, while a group of students whispered among themselves, their giggles piercing the tense atmosphere. Then, breaking through the low hum of discussions, a young girl, her eyes wide with curiosity and her hands clutching a faded teddy bear, tugged at her mom's sleeve. "Mommy," she questioned in that loud, clear voice only children possess, "why doesn't the man stand up for the lady?" Her mother, looking slightly embarrassed, tried to hush her with a gentle pat. "Shh, honey, not now." But the question hung in the air, echoing the sentiments of many, and I felt every pair of eyes on me, weighing and measuring. The weight of the gazes made my neck feel hot, and a bubbling mix of irritation and defensiveness rose within me. "Listen," I blurted out, louder than I meant to. "It's not about giving up the seat, it's the way it was demanded." The elderly woman, who had sparked this whole scene, fixed me with a stern gaze. Back in my day, we didn't need to be asked. Young folks knew their manners. Around us, the atmosphere grew thick with tension. It felt like being in the eye of a storm, the entire compartment hanging on a thread, waiting, watching, forming silent judgments. With every passing second, I felt the urge to push back against the prying eyes and defend my stance. So am I a jerk for refusing to offer my seat to the pregnant woman? As the tension continued to swell, a voice, distinct from the others, rang out. A young woman juggling a wriggling toddler on her hip shared her own plight. "I ride this train every day, and trust me, with him," she gestured to her son who was trying to wriggle out of her grasp. "It's no walk in the park, but no one's ever offered me a seat." Another voice chimed in, this time from an elderly man leaning heavily on a wooden cane. He laughed, a raspy chuckle filled with years of wisdom. "Been on my feet since 3 stations back. They say age has its privileges, but guess they don't apply on the metro." The train car began to fill with more voices, as more people started sharing their stories. A college student, carrying a big backpack, spoke about standing for long hours after a tough day at school. A nurse, still in her work clothes, shared about her long day, which lasted 12 hours. Each person had their own story, showing that everyone has their own challenges every day. At first, it seemed like there might be a big argument, but soon, the train car was filled with all sorts of conversations. Some people were nodding and saying, "Yes, that happened to me too." Others were having more serious talks, maybe not always agreeing, but still listening to each other. And some were even laughing, sharing funny stories or jokes about things they all understood. So, instead of people getting mad at one person, the whole train car became a place where people were talking about understanding each other, being kind, and what it's like living in a busy city. It was like everyone realized that they're not so different after all, and that everyone has their own story. Soon, the familiar tone of my station's announcement filled the carriage. I gathered my things and rose from my seat. The pregnant woman, caught up in conversation with another passenger, glanced my way. "This is my stop," I said, motioning toward the vacant seat. "Please, take it." She paused for a moment, her eyes studying mine, before a hint of a smile tugged at her lips. "Thank you," she murmured, more in acknowledgement of our shared experience than the seat itself. Stepping onto the platform, I was instantly hit with the usual rush and noise of the station. All that tension from before, gone. Just like that. It made me think, life's not just about what one person thinks or does. It's about all of us and the crazy different things we all go through. As I headed out, blending in with the city's hustle and bustle, it hit me. What started as just another train ride turned into this big eye-opener about people and their stories. Makes you wonder what everyone's dealing with, doesn't it? It's perfectly acceptable for teens to sit at the front of the bus if there is space. However, as soon as an older person, pregnant woman, or disabled individual boards, it's important to immediately stand and offer them your seat, even if there are no seats available. There's no need to say anything like, "Here, take my seat." Simply move when you see them approaching. This small act of kindness can have a significant impact on someone's day. If you enjoyed today's stories, check out the other videos on your screen now. Submit your own stories at you'rethejerk.com. Subscribe now, or you're definitely the jerk.